Your Honor, the defendant committed a calculated, premeditated mass murder upon other juveniles in a structured school setting, placing defendant at a juvenile detention facility, a child care facility, as it was couched by the witness, Ms. Calcaterra, today, such as Children's Village, a setting surrounding him with other juveniles, not to mention at-risk juveniles, would be entirely inappropriate and against the interest of justice. The Oakland County Jail has and will continue to provide a safe and appropriate placement for defendant while ensuring safety for the defendant himself, the children currently housed at Children's Village, and the public at large. As my colleague, Ms. Washington, mentioned earlier, the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act requirements make federal funds available for states that plan for and implement various procedures regarding the detention and confinement of certain juveniles. That is what is implicated in the form of this hearing. The finding that defendants should be housed in the Oakland County Jail has been made pursuant to Michigan's statutes and court rule previously by Judge Karniak at the district court, and it is only federal funding considerations that implicate this hearing. In order for the court to review whether it remains in the best interest of justice to continue his placement at the Oakland County Jail. Now, this court has been presented with multiple exhibits to review in order to get a glimpse behind the curtain at the true essence that is this defendant and the risks he presents. You have before you a 15-year-old with the sophistication and the capability to plan out and execute a large-scale school shooting. And the evidence presented to you during this hearing shows a deeper and more calculated mind than any typical 15-year-old. His ongoing text with another juvenile, which you'll find in the exhibit book, arguably a kindred spirit to the defendant, delve into the depths of the defendant's mind and give us a glimpse of what he is capable of thinking, what he is capable of concealing, and what he is capable of doing when he is ready. The sampling of text messages you've been provided between defendant and his friend date back to February of 2021, and they reveal much about the defendant and certainly should compel your honor to be very concerned about placing this defendant in a relatively less secure setting with juveniles, and certainly one which mirrors in so many ways the scene of his original crime. The defendant himself tells you through his own words when you read his text that he should not be moved from the security and oversight of the Oakland County Jail. In some of his texts, he tells his friend he's so glad they can talk to one another and not be afraid to let their, quote, masks slip, end quote. That defendant appreciates that his friend is, again, I'm quoting, like the one person who is as fucked as me and shares it, end quote. He goes on to explain that, and I quote again, in public, you have to put on a mask to blend in, end quote. And how they in their friendship have gotten to a place where they've shared their individual darknesses. And according to the defendant, quote, we aren't afraid to let our masks slip to each other, end quote. Defendant goes further to say the scary thing is, I like being this fucked up. And that's the end of one of his text threads and one of his quotes to his friend. That is the person, that is the kind of person that we are contemplating putting with other juveniles who are much less sophisticated, at risk, that he would gravitate to. He talks about in his text and then in his journal about how he wants to explore his darkness with birds that he has found, wanting to make them suffer and hear their screams. And he doesn't stop at the text. He doesn't stop at writing in his journal. He goes on to actually record videos of him doing those things. And you'll hear his voice, you will hear the suffering of the bird, and you will know that it is not just words, it's not just thoughts, but it's things that he has set about to do. His word that he uses is that he wants to torture those birds. You'll see the video. You will also see the picture of a separate bird that he decapitated, and he writes about in his journal having taken it to school and is thrilled that he didn't get caught and finds others foolish or stupid for not catching him. He tempts others with his actions. He reveals them, and the only people who had an opportunity to do anything about it, those who live with him 24/7, did nothing. If these don't amount to prior delinquent acts, I don't know what would. And that is one of the factors that this court is bound to consider. And it doesn't stop at the text. It doesn't stop at the journal. In his journal, he talks about the videos that he makes on November 29th, the day before he executes his fellow students. And he tries to execute so many others. He makes a video about what his plans are, who he wants to kill first, the type of person. All of those details are things that he has wrote about, he has thought about, and he sets about to do. And again, with no warning to those outside of his own home. He writes in depth in his journal about his desire to stalk, rape, and kill a fellow classmate, his plans for the school shooting, what he'll do, how he'll do it, who he will kill first, how he's putting in his plan to action. And among those steps is enlisting his own father to get him a 9mm gun, because that particular weapon is more desirable to maximize the number of kills that he can get. He also speaks of how he'll be remembered. November 30th, 2021 was not an isolated incident for this defendant. This is someone who wants to be remembered, and he has contemplated how he wants to be remembered. Not as someone who made a positive impact on society, not someone who brought something good or meaningful to the table, but he wants to be compared to the likes of Hitler or Dahmer or the Parkland school shooter, using them as inspiration for actions that he sets about taking. His actions on November 30th were not impulsive, they were not accidental, they were calculated, rehearsed, and well thought out. And not just his actions, but what he wanted to achieve from them. He anticipated and wrote about his expected life behind bars with the intention that he would be remembered forever. He contemplated the pros and cons of going out in a blaze of glory, of being killed or committing suicide at the end of this all. But neither of those, he expressed, would satisfy his desire to be remembered forever. And his behaviors since his incarceration have not changed. They've continued to demonstrate that he hasn't altered his way of thinking. His request on December 17th, you'll see in the exhibits from the jail, his request that how do I get my fan mail, my hate mail, and my commissary? He knows that he's going to have people who admire him and people who hate him alike, and he wants that notoriety. He communicates with others and takes the opportunity to commiserate with those who gravitate toward him and share his feelings, those that commend him for his actions. He takes time, and again, I'm asking the court to consider, and this also goes to some of the relative ability between the two institutions to be able to meet his needs. You know, we've talked a little bit about the education that's offered to him. He's got Khan Academy on that tablet, as well as video games, as well as books, as well as the ability to communicate with those who he wants to communicate with. And if you read through these, not only the content of his emails with people, but also the frequency with which he has access to that tablet. This is how he chooses to spend his time. He doesn't choose to spend it on Khan Academy. He doesn't choose to spend it on education. And he didn't choose to spend it on education prior to his criminal actions. And some of the disturbing things and some of the telling things about these email communications, he's on it almost daily, and if not daily, he talks with other juveniles, other people who are of his similar age. He commiserates with them about things that they go through and things that he's gone through. But overall, he indicates to them that it's not so bad in here. I get a TV, I get good food, the deputies are nice. He's the one who's giving a firsthand account of his experience in this jail. And it's over and over and over again. He also takes time to mention to some of his fans out there, my next court date is February 22nd. Maybe you can watch it on TV. This is what he wants. He wants to be noticed. He wants us to relish in his behaviors. And if he is given the opportunity to converse one-on-one with little to no supervision, because we won't have these in writing when he's at Children's Village, when he's talking to another juvenile in the corner of the gym, when he's talking with them at the lunch table. And that should scare all of us. And I know it scares me. This is not a person you should place in the position of having contact with and potential influence over other juveniles, much less those juveniles who our courts have already determined to be at risk. To place him in a school, a lunchroom cafeteria, a classroom setting with juveniles, just like he enjoyed as he planned for the day he would take off his mask and execute those classmates, is an injustice that no one should have to bear. The witnesses that you've heard from in the accompanying exhibits reveal that while both facilities offer a claimed secure option, one is far superior in handling this defendant and all that he brings to the table, and that is the Oakland County Jail. Placement in the Oakland County Jail rather than Children's Village serves the defendant himself. You heard from the manager of Children's Village about concerns that she has, not only, and she has to be concerned with all of the juveniles in that child care facility. She has concerns about all of the juveniles that are currently housed in that secure detention facility. She also has concerns about the defendant himself. Contrary to that, there's no concerns by Captain Vita if he's housed at the Oakland County Jail. There are no services or opportunities that he could or should receive in the juvenile facility that he is not receiving in the Oakland County Jail, including opportunities for education. Most importantly for this court, however, is that continued placement of this defendant in the Oakland County Jail is what serves the public and the interest of justice as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Combs.